On a 17th century page, a tulip seems to be on fire. White petals open beneath red feathers, each flame so precise that it looks like the triumph of a patient grower. In many prized tulips like it, such beauty was also a symptom of disease. Inside the flower, a virus interfered with its pigment. As color was suppressed in irregular paths, the lighter ground beneath broke through. The Dutch called such a flower broken. Its transformation was visible. Its cause remained hidden. That biological surprise is real. The familiar sequel, in which an entire nation gambled away its houses and wrecked its economy, is not. To understand what happened in 1637, we have to keep one beautiful infection, one genuine market failure, and one very successful myth from becoming the same story. The tulip had traveled before the legend began. Cultivated in the Ottoman world, it entered European gardens during the 16th century. In the Low Countries, the botanist Carolus Clusius studied it closely. Clusius described tulips changing color, then often declining. He had recorded the contradiction centuries before plant science could explain it. The bloom became more extraordinary as the bulb became less secure. Collectors compared forms, gave cultivars grand names, and preserved short-lived flowers in painted books. A tulip could survive the season as an image, a reputation, and an entry beside a price. Broken flowers occupied the most treacherous end of that world. The change was hard to predict. Infected plants could weaken, and new bulbs multiplied so slowly that the supply of a spectacular bloom could take years to grow. Winter made the problem stranger. Picture a grower whose bulb is below the soil. Its bloom is gone, the next is hidden in the future. An acquaintance considers buying a flower he cannot inspect, attached to a bulb he cannot lift, on the strength of a name, a drawing, and the grower's word. Trust was part of the product. The grower's reputation supports his claim about identity. The buyer's experience helps him judge rarity. Family, neighbors, fellow believers, and familiar tavern companions formed the pathways along which bulbs and confidence moved. By the autumn and winter of 1636, agreements for later delivery multiplied, while much of the crop remained underground. Common varieties joined the trade. More buyers and sellers committed themselves to future flowers, expecting rising prices to make the bargains worthwhile. This was speculation. Some recorded prices were extraordinary and the rise was real. Yet it was not a modern national stock exchange filled with every rank of Dutch society. The people visible in the archives form a much smaller world. Merchants, skilled tradespeople, growers, and connoisseurs, often already connected to one another. The same closeness that made the market possible also made it fragile. Our buyer's confidence rests on the grower, and his own bargain may support another expectation. When belief in a higher price fails, no anonymous institution waits underneath, only familiar people and their words. In the first week of February 1637, buyers stopped accepting the prices. Our expected buyer does not arrive. Across the trade, sales fail, and agreements that looked profitable become arguments over obligations no one wants to carry. This is the quietest version of a crash. The grower still has a bulb beneath the soil. The payment has not arrived. A buyer who gave his word now refuses the bargain. No exchange bell rings. Nothing has vanished from the garden. What breaks is the connection between a future flower and a promise people trusted. When the famous story widens from this room to a ruined country, the archive refuses to follow. Historian Anne Goldgar spent years tracing buyers, sellers, contracts, court files, and bankruptcies. She found only 37 people who had spent more than 300 guilders on bulbs, roughly the annual earnings of a master craftsman. That is not a count of everyone who traded. It is a useful boundary around documented spending above that threshold. And most of those buyers were prosperous enough to bear it. Some people certainly lost expected income, and some disputes were painful. The evidence does not reveal a wave of tulip-driven bankruptcies. Mass unemployment, suicides in canals, or a Dutch economy brought down by flowers. Many agreements had not yet produced either payment or delivery. Paper fortunes shrank more dramatically than the country around them. So why did this limited failure feel large enough to survive for centuries? Money was only part of the injury. Commerce in the Dutch Republic depended heavily on reputation and good faith. These were not strangers disappearing behind a market screen. Many participants had known and traded with one another for years. refusing a bargain-tested honor inside the very relationships that had made uncertain winter trading possible. That breach offered perfect material for satire. In 1637, prints and songs turned tulip traders into fools. One image placed Flora, goddess of flowers, aboard a wagon crowded with personified vices. Men and women abandoned their old trades to follow it. Named tulips lay in the road. In the distance, the whole foolish vehicle disappeared into the waves. It resembles a report of social collapse until one reads the museum label, cartoon. The crowd in that print tells us something important, just not how many Dutch people traded bulbs. It records fear of greed, unstable value, blurred social rank, and promises that could no longer be trusted. Satire enlarged those anxieties so that viewers could recognize and condemn them. Later, writers inherited the enlargement. In 1841, the Scottish journalist Charles Mackay published Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. His tulip chapter described nobles, farmers, servants, sailors, and chimney sweeps rushing into the trade. Houses and land were sacrificed. Panic became universal. Mackay also repeated the irresistible tale of a sailor who mistook a priceless tulip bulb for an onion, ate it with his breakfast, and spent months in prison. Its detail helped it survive, even though archival evidence cannot confirm it as history from 1637. The book became famous, the warning became portable. Every new speculative craze could be called another Tulip Mania. Each repetition polished the same simple shape: foolish crowd, absurd price, sudden ruin. The satire's people kept multiplying long after those winter bargains had failed. Modern science eventually gave the broken flower a different diagnosis. Tulip breaking is not one uniform disease, and stripes alone do not prove infection. Modern Rembrandt-style tulips may be bred for stable patterns. Several potyviruses can disrupt color. Flower-breaking infections can also deform flowers, weaken plants, and travel between hosts with aphids. Modern archives preserve the rise, the failed sales, and the anger of 1637, while removing the unsupported crowd. What survives is a close commercial world where viral instability helped make some flowers exceptionally desirable, and where familiar people stopped honoring their words. Look again at the broken tulip. Its pale flames are a physical pattern left by infection. The enormous crowd around it is another kind of pattern. Left by satire and repetition, a real crisis remembered as the ruin of a country.